Chapter 2. The Turning Point. I can't stands no more, as Popeye would say. Who is controlling your mind? Side note, I wrote in my first book that the backbone to wealth was property investing. And whilst it is a very good strategy, it is not the backbone. The backbone is your mindset. A powerful, positively driven mindset can actually create powerful real magic in creating the life you design. However, a powerful negative driven mindset can actually create powerful real magic in uncreating your life by design too. The journey started when I was at a turning point in my own life, where I was about to become a complete financial disaster. The seeds had been planted for a while and it was about to collapse around me. I reached a point where I realised that where once everything I had touched had turned to gold, now everything I was touching was turning to shit. It was in early October 2009 that I reached my lowest point. I couldn't cope with the continual bombardment of creditors. They were asking for explanations and intentions. I had already started to standardise my responses, but there was a lot of individual work needed on each response, and each response required several replies and a lot of rereading the responses to be sure everything was appropriate. Nearly all of my creditors were excellent, and whilst angry or disappointed, looked commercially on the situation. But still, as there were so many emails and letters which all needed a response, the rereading and answering of the emails was all having a bad effect on me. I was intimately aware of how bad the financial situation was, and I was dealing with virtually zero income for 2009, which in previous years had not been below $1 million or two. I was surrounded by negativity in the emails and the responses. Even the positive responses, which I was very grateful for, were still to do with the negative situation. The lack mentality and my life situation were doing their very best to engulf me. I can easily understand how people could commit suicide or just run away if they are in that sort of situation and let their emotions rule their decisions. It is like being trapped in a cage and waiting to be slaughtered. Frankly, it is horrible, and I send positive thoughts to all that are in that situation, whether it be from their own doing or not, but I do not feel sorry for them. I do not feel sorry for anyone anymore. Not because I am nasty, just now I understand that this is a lack thought and can hurt, and when I see situations where once I would have felt sorry, now I just see a positive outcome for them. I'll cover this in more depth later on in the book. Back to the point. I was at an all-time low, and I realised I had lost my automatic success mentality where I was certain of the outcome. I was still able to segment off my days into 30 minutes here or an hour there of positive stuff. But my life situation was pretty much a nightmare for all outside of personal stuff. My mind controlled me by getting me to look at the future constantly or what mistakes and bad choices I'd made in the past. The past and the future was where I was living. The mind kept me out of the present moment as much as it could. Unfortunately, I could not create a new future from the future or from the past. I needed to be in the present moment, as that is the only place where creation can happen. There was no way my mind would slow down, let alone stop. It was a nightmare, a living nightmare. As I am someone who likes to plan everything, and I often joke with people that I don't go to the toilet without a plan. But how could I plan for this? I was not able to plan my way out because I was continually having rocks thrown at me. It wasn't just my creditors throwing rocks. Everything I was trying to do to solve the problem, all the new business ideas, were chucking rocks at me as well. Where once everything I tried went right, now it was all going wrong. My mind couldn't understand what was happening, as it thought, well, I'm doing what I've done in the past, why is it not producing money now? The reason was, I wasn't quite doing the same things. The key element to creating wealth, where your thoughts are, was in the wrong place. I had a map, but it led to the wrong destination, so each time I tried, I ended up in the wrong place. At some point in October, I suddenly realised that I was not doing the right thing, or the right thing in the right way, and that I had to figure out what was wrong if there was any chance of me getting this back on track. So I sent a letter to every creditor that came in, which said, amongst other things, either make me bankrupt or let me go and try and sort this out, and I'll come back to you with my proposals the week commencing the 25th of January. All but one said yes, and then he issued a statutory demand which would lead to me being made bankrupt, which again was like a switch. I thought, this is bad, but it's the right thing, as this person has now given you the excuse, if you want, to say it's not your fault. But of course it was my fault. I can blame the credit crunch, I can blame the person who issued and say that this was a bad mistake by them. Whatever, it doesn't change the fact that I brought about the situation in the first place by exposing my cash flow. And more deeply than that, I brought about the situation with the lack mindset I had. When Northern Rock collapsed, I sat back and saw that the game was changing. I had been waiting to start a big refinance for quite a while whilst we were sorting out a business issue. That was resolved in October '08 and I instigated the refinance. Then I first saw the possible effects of how the credit crunch could end up severely affecting us in February when the huge refinance I was doing started to fail. It was not one deal but 60 small ones. They were unconnected and falling out of bed. This was not through our own fault, but just through lenders withdrawing from the market. All of these things happened, and I think somewhere amongst this started my lack mentality. This is where I started to use the law of attraction to create a lack of money. The law doesn't care how it's used. It has no emotions. It doesn't care if you believe in it or not. We do not need to believe in gravity for it to be effective. So in October, I realised that something was very wrong with my state of mind, but I couldn't figure out what. I decided that I needed to start doing the things again that I had done to keep or move my mind forward, which I had previously done in 2003 to 2007. I decided to surround myself in personal development. I knew the answer would be in there. I just needed to figure out what it was. So as it happened, I had kept my favourite personal development courses out of the packing boxes. I remember getting them out and thinking to myself, are you kidding yourself or what? You don't have the time to look at this personal development stuff. You've got real world problems to deal with. Then a few weeks later, they would hold the key to my solution. I wasn't looking for them to have the answer, so much as for them to remind me where I kept the answer hidden in my mind. The answer was in there, otherwise I would never have created all the success in the first place. At the time we were still living in Cyprus, and we had a school run to do daily. It was a 60-minute round trip. So I took the children every day I could and spent time on the way back listening to audio self-improvement programs. When I was in my free time, either in the bath or after the children had gone to bed, I read more of these programs. Then I reached a point, I don't remember the exact date, there was one program which was telling me, try to hold just 15 seconds of positive thought as it would give me huge energy and move forward. It was the second or third time I'd listened to this program. I was on the way back from school and I had chosen my positive thought, which always made me feel great whenever I thought about it. And all I had to do was hold it for 15 seconds. Should have been easy. I couldn't hold it for 3 to 4 seconds without being dragged off by my mind to a problem I had, or what the future might hold, or a choice I'd made in the past that caused another situation. I suddenly realised that I was not in control of my mind anymore. I was not the thinker, my mind was in control of me. This is like a power tool being in control of the carpenter. I pulled the car over immediately and said out loud, I will think about this for 15 seconds before driving on. I had made a decision and was not going any further until I was in control again, if just for 15 seconds. After several painful attempts, I did it and drove on. On the way home, every minute or so I held the thought again for another 15 seconds. Throughout the day, whenever a problem began to become too much, I stopped and thought about the positive thought, and it gave me the energy to carry on and deal with the obstacle. Not only that, but I usually had the answer I'd been looking for given to me as I came out of the 15 seconds. I started to make it a habit. I started to make notes from all the courses I was doing. I was making notes only about the things I felt I was doing wrong. I would then, as soon as I'd finished the course or the book, read it all over again. I can speed read, however, I was trying to absorb the information, so I ended up creating what I called my golden book, which I used to remind me of all the key points all of the time. The elements I was taking from all the courses were reminding me of the way my mind used to think. I was at an advantage to someone who has never created riches before, because I knew what it was like when I thought the right way. One of the most powerful, if not the most powerful things I've ever learned came out of these studies, and it is a sentence that is actually the key secret to a happy life instantly, and will remain with you forever when you learn it. It truly gives you immense power. It gave me enough power to handle bankruptcy and public humiliation, as if it were all just bouncing off an invisible force shield. Now, I bet you really want me to tell you that sentence now, but I share that later on in the book. There is some stuff you need to find out about yourself before I share the simplicity of that and not have it wasted on you, by you looking at it and ignoring it because it seems too easy. And if I make you wait for it, then you may just appreciate it for the true power it can deliver for you. What I learned along my journey from lack back to abundance is that this cannot be rushed. It has to be taken slowly and allow time for your consciousness to regain control of your mind. There is a quick way, but you need to remove all the negative bits to ensure that there is no chance of their return. It took me 3 weeks to get to that level, which is quite good. However, I expect it to take at least a couple of years to cement this stuff into place. Then I expect to need to remind myself every few months for the rest of my life. This is like servicing your car. Your mind needs servicing too. The first question you need to ask yourself is, am I in control of my mind, or is it in control of me? From now on, try and observe your thoughts. Don't judge them, and try and think just a little better, or a lot better if you can. So listen to your thoughts, observe them, and be a silent witness to them. When the opportunity arises, think better thoughts. There really is no limit to how much better you can think. What I had to do was first regain control of my mind, and that took me about 3 to 5 weeks to master fully. I knew I had to regain control of it, as it is from there that I created all my wealth in the past. So I knew that without that control I would never create the wealth I desired again. Being an ex-multimillionaire, I have the advantage of remembering how my mind was when I created wealth in the past, and therefore I at least have a map of how to get there. The foundation skill to you creating your life by design. If you cannot control what you think, then you cannot create the future you desire. However, you do not need control to easily create the future which you do not desire, as this you can do by accident. During this process, I intend for you to turn this natural by accident skill on its head, so that by accident and by design, everything you do creates the life you desire. Does that sound good? Okay, I'm going to go a little deeper on the power of the main point I raised in the last section, as this point doesn't just need to be read about, it needs to be absorbed and accepted fully, so that it can then be taken advantage of and really exploited for the true power that it gives you. This power can be utilised for any desire you have, and literally can create the life you're after. And no, I am in no way exaggerating. This point is the difference, the key you have almost certainly been searching for, but it may take you a few readings to realise it. And it is also your baseline. When you feel out of control, you come back to this and you are back in control. The better you absorb this, the faster you will be at peace and be able to create the life you desire. On the path to riches, without control over this point, you are simply doomed to be repeating the mistakes you made in the past, or merely mediocre success at best. If you do not master this point, then there is no point in trying to obtain great wealth, as you will struggle forever until you recognise that this point is the very foundation that must be put in place to bring about everything else you study. With this in place, you are certain, and I mean certain, to bring about your desires. However, you don't need to know how to master this point to get great wealth, as you can master it with ignorance too, as plenty have. But I'm going to assume you would rather be aware and a master of it than hope you can acquire it through ignorance. And this will surely help you if you are trying all of the stuff that you are learning and it still doesn't seem to be working for you. Anyway, let's begin. If you are really going to get the power out of the stuff I'm going to share with you, then you're going to need to look inside and observe your emotional responses to what I say as well. You're going to need to question your judgments and don't just accept what I say. Instead, observe your mind's reaction to it and then apply logic before concluding. Or make a choice as to what you believe. You're in fact not looking for conclusions, you are in fact merely looking. I'll explain that more as we go on. Also, I know looking inside can be a very scary place to visit, but without putting the bits right in there, you'll never get what you want. I could give you a bulletproof formula for riches, and your mind would still find a way to screw it up, just as mine did. So if you truly want the life of your dreams, then your answer to getting it lies inside your mind. 15 seconds of positive thought. What I didn't say previously was that 3 to 4 seconds was actually an achievement in itself, as my mind was continuously talking and jumping between the past and future, monsters in the closet, terrors waiting for me outside. In truth, my mind was never silent, so 3 to 4 seconds, however awful, was actually 3 to 4 seconds more than I had had for a long time. I also didn't cover the full power of this technique. This isn't something you should or maybe might want to have a go at. This goes on your must-do list. To-do list, by the way, are for the weak-minded. Where you want to put this on your must-do list is your choice, of course, as we all have free will. But without accepting that this is a must-do, and without actually doing this for yourself, you will simply be holding back the magic power that you have within you. So it is your choice as to when you want to start utilising the power to deliver your desires. Taking back control from the nutter who is currently running your show. I'm betting I've poked the pain hard enough so you may actually do this tiny bit now. Okay, so today you need to think of something from your past, something that makes you feel great when you think about it. It is irrelevant what others think. Others do not matter. We are talking about you. Others come later, as you can't deliver anywhere near your full measure of help to anyone unless you've got yourself right first. You cannot give love if you do not have love. The thought that was the one that did it for me, and I think about it daily, was in 2001 I got my private pilot's licence. And they actually let me fly aeroplanes. Having been a nutter on the road for years, I couldn't actually believe they were even letting me learn to fly, let alone fly off on my own. Or worse, look after passengers. But they did. And I passed and I learned some wonderful control over my desire to drive fast. And I'm over that now too. Anyway, my son David was 2 at the time, and I took him flying for the first time. Mum and Alison came too, but it was the sheer joy of seeing him on the back seat with the headphones on that really gave me pleasure, and continues to do so today. It was that thought which I tried to focus on for just 15 seconds. But I couldn't even hold a thought that made me feel so good for just 5 seconds. Can you imagine how bad that felt? I was totally out of control of my mind. Some nutter I didn't know was running the show and wouldn't even let me have 15 seconds to think about something that made me feel good. Finally, this made me angry. It made me angry enough to demand that I was allowed to do this or I wouldn't leave the spot. So if you haven't got the life you desire, then there's almost certainly some nutter inside your head making damn stupid decisions based on rubbish information. He or she may not be as crazy as my nutter, but he or she will be in there. If you doubt it, then over the process of this book, I'm going to introduce you to your own nutter. So now, I want you to choose a powerful thought, one that no matter what happens, no one could ever take away from you. Find yours now and hold it for 15 seconds. Don't move on until you have done this. Remember, I'm telling you now to think about one of the most pleasurable things you've had ever happen in your life. This is not work, this is joy. Go and enjoy it. Can you hold it for 15 seconds? Pause this now and give it a go. Welcome back. So did you hold it for 15 seconds? Nah, didn't think so. Well, keep going until you can. Pull over, stop listening or stop reading and do it until you can. There is nothing more valuable that I'm ever going to write than you regaining or even gaining for the first time control of your mind. Hold that thought for 15 seconds, keep going until you do, and then keep repeating it every hour or so until you can turn it on at any time. You can't do this too much. The more you do it, the easier it will be for you to do all of this stuff. As a minimum, try it now for just 10 or 15 minutes and enjoy observing the madness that dwells within your mind. With observation comes great power, as you will very soon find out. I'm going to show you some techniques next which will ensure you can do this. But first, I suggest you try and do it without these techniques, as I develop them later. And you really must observe the madness before you can easily learn to silence it. You need to make it visible now, so that you can see through its camouflage. This is as a protection, just in case you ever allow it to come back in again. Actually, you may in fact enjoy, as I did, a day of just practicing this without reading on, as it may well have been one of the most crucial days of my life. The moment when I got angry and forced my nutter to hand back control to me for 15 seconds was one of the key turning points of my life. As someone who you have allowed to share his wisdom with you, I am saying to you, if I could force you to stop now and spend a day practicing this, then I would, as I know the benefit. But that, as with everything, is your choice. So I suggest you pause this now and you give it a go. Give it a go for 10 or 15 minutes and then I'll see you again. Or spend the day on it. It's your choice. Overpowering your little saboteur. Welcome back. The first question is, how did you do? Did you manage to regain control of your own mind? Were you able to regain control from the nutter who currently has it? Did you for the first time get to meet this little saboteur? Was it a rewarding experience? Or was it something you just read and didn't really pay attention to? I expect that after a while you were able to hold on to that positive thought for 15 seconds, although it was actually a lot harder than you thought it would be. However, here's a way to make it far easier to go well past 15 seconds with no effort. Go back to your wonderful thought and think about it more. Relive it. Remember how good that feeling was and then start to feel it, not just think it. Go back and experience it again. With me, I felt the surface of the aircraft, the feel of the door opening, how it felt when I sat in the seat, the smell of the morning grass covered with dew. I remember walking to the aircraft doing the pre-flight checks while my family waited for me to say that they could get into the plane. I remember Alison putting David's earphones on, and I remember the smile on his face and how excited he was. It was a moment, a picture in my life I will always love, and if I choose to, I could relive that moment again and again and never get bored of it. The 5 minutes before and the 5 minutes after that moment I have now lived again countless times. This is just one technique whereby you control your thoughts, however there are more to come. So let's begin, as with this skill you literally have built the foundation to certain wealth. As for how well you did, well, if this is your first read through, then I'm guessing that at best, after a few attempts of holding a positive thought for a few seconds, you dropped the subject and went on with your life. After all, why wouldn't you? That is what I did the first half dozen times or more I learnt this technique. But the question I should have asked was, why did I? And I'm guessing, because I can only guess, why did you not consider that this was important enough to give more thought to? After all, I had written earlier, well, keep going until you can. Pull over, stop listening or stop reading, and do it until you can. There is nothing more valuable that I'm ever going to write than you regaining, or even gaining for the first time, control of your mind. So did you think I was lying with that comment? Or did you do as we all do and just skim over certain text? Well, I'm guessing that some people took the time and did it. They were able to hold one positive thought in their mind for 15 seconds. And I also like to think that a few have now got this as an on-demand service. So at any point they can regain control of their mind. But the majority of you probably won't have either done it or have it on demand. Why is that? If you didn't do it, and you don't yet have the life you truly desire, then the question to ask yourself is, why didn't I do that? Don't worry, I was expecting it. After all, I didn't do it myself. But the point is, I did in the end. And that is where and when the change happened. That is where the power is. Without that bit, you are building on sand, and everything you build will always be built on sand. Please get the importance of this. This is the foundation to the life you desire. It may seem insignificant or unimportant. You may be reading this trying to find the missing keys to the life you desire. Well, I'm handing them to you. The life you desire can only be unlocked with a still mind. So stop looking outside and start spending time in there. Teachers told you daydreaming is bad. The teachers were wrong, as I will prove later on. And for the answer, why didn't you do it? I'll quote from a great book that many of us have read and just skimmed over without noticing the true power of it. To do things in a way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step towards getting rich. To think what you want to think is to think truth regardless of appearances. Every person has the natural and inherent power to think what he wants to think, but it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. To think according to appearances is easy. To think truth regardless of appearances is laborious and requires the expenditure of more power than any other work a person has to perform. There is no labour from which most people shrink as they do from that of sustained and consecutive thought. It is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. Every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind which observes it. This can only be prevented by holding the thought of the truth. To look upon the appearance of disease will produce the form of disease in your own mind, and ultimately in your body. Instead, you must hold the thought of the truth, which is that there is no disease. Disease is only the appearance, and the reality is health. To look upon the appearance of poverty will produce corresponding forms in your own mind. Instead, you must hold to the truth that there is no poverty, there is only abundance. It requires power to think health when surrounded by the appearances of disease, or to think riches when in the midst of the appearances of poverty. But he who acquires the power becomes a mastermind. He can conquer fate, and he can have what he wants. This was taken from The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, Chapter 4, page 19. Bob Proctor says he has read this book several hundred times and always finds something new. I suggest you listen to that section again a few times. I first read that book in early 2007 and I highlighted a couple of bits from that page of text, but I didn't realise the power of it until just the other day. As it happens, it wasn't the text that finally got me to get it. It was another reproduction of the work. But the point is that I read it and I ignored it. Why? Because my mind didn't apply it. It didn't realise the absolute power of it, and it didn't want the very hard work of having to think. But the point is that this is it. This is the very foundation of building riches. If you cannot control your own mind, then you cannot give it clear and consistent direction about where you want it to go. Yes, it's obvious, but we let go of the obvious without taking the correct action. So can you at will control your mind? Right now, I want you to hold a consecutive thought of something wonderful for just 15 seconds. Do it right now. Don't worry if you can't do it yet. Don't worry at all. But that's for later on. I couldn't. But if you want certain wealth, then you have to acquire this skill. So keep practicing. Practice until you can. You can practice some more in or just after everyday situations, on the bus, in the car, on the train, whenever. Whenever, wherever. Regain control of your mind. You deserve it. Without it, you will not have certainty. And with certainty comes absolute power. That was skill number 1 that you have to acquire. If you haven't acquired it yet, or you just want to move on, and in a few months' time you think that nothing is changing, why did I read that book? What am I doing on this website? My life is still the same. It will always be the same. You will always appear to be stuck simply because you haven't acquired skill number 1. You haven't built a solid foundation. No mind, the next stage. When you practice silencing your mind, at some point you attain no mind. It is when you literally think of nothing. No thoughts of any kind. The Zen people call this Satori, but that's far too clever for me. So I'll just stick with no mind. This does not mean you are asleep. No, you are just fully present, fully alert and fully aware. You will probably have experienced glimpses of this throughout your life, and they have passed probably without much notice. However, the technique of silencing the mind's chatter, together with some other techniques which I'm about to show you, will create the byproduct of no mind in the same way as continued practice of the martial arts creates the byproduct of Qi. This no mind isn't something you have to be superhuman to get either. All it is you switching off your thinking. I have taught both my children to do this, so you can learn it too. Admittedly, they didn't have as much insane chatter going on as we adults, but there still was junk in their minds. When you decide you're going to bring in no mind, don't try, just bring it in, and silence your mind. I suggest you find your favourite spot in the house and that it is very quiet when you first do this, so that there are no external distractions. Once you do it, see how long you can hold it for. I play a game with David practicing how fast you can bring it in and how long you can hold it for. It takes him a few seconds to silence his mind before bringing it in, and he can usually hold it for about a minute, which is of course fine. In fact, the power of this is so great that once you can control it and bring it in on demand anywhere, you only need to hold it for a few moments to completely regain control and effectively restart your hard drive. I practice bringing in no mind in all sorts of conditions, on the train, in the car, in the shops, in a bar, while playing music, while playing heavy metal music even. I kept practicing, and in the end there was no place that I could not still my mind in an instant. Now I haven't kept this up to that level, as I just don't need that level, but I trained hard enough that I could actually do it. No mind will just happen when you are ready. Don't struggle with it, and don't force it. Just allow it to happen when you feel you would like to be able to. I suggest you keep returning to this chapter, as if you get this and can turn it on whenever you want to, then you cannot not notice the immediate change in your reality. This hidden obstacle will never be invisible again. Spend plenty of time building your foundation. You can't put the roof on the house until you have built the walls, and your walls need to have a solid foundation. Side note, I have mentioned repetition already, but repetition is a master skill. People complain when I repeat things, but the skill of repetition is essential to learn. It is not the things we are yet to discover that will change our lives, but the things we have learnt and ignored. Through repeating great stuff, you will acquire great power. Do not be afraid to reread a good book instead of read a new one. You are not missing out. In fact, you've already missed out, so it's time to go back and reread. To those of you who can now control their minds for 15 seconds, did you experience the power? It felt good, didn't it? Well, the next part will enhance that feeling a lot. Next, you're going to create an impenetrable force shield.